Please subscribe our channel and hit the icon button.
In the quaint, flower-kissed village of Elderwood, tucked away between rolling green hills and the edge of an ancient, whispering forest, lived a woman named Mary. Though the world outside bustled with cities and machines and noise, Elderwood remained untouched by time, and Mary was its gentle soul. Mary was old, though no one quite knew her age. Her hair was silver as moonlight and usually tucked into a neat bun. Her eyes held the sparkle of a spring morning, and her laughter had the kind of warmth that wrapped around people like a favorite blanket. She lived in a small stone cottage covered in ivy, with a crooked chimney and a garden full of herbs and wildflowers. Birds loved her garden, and the wind always seemed to hum as it passed her window. Although Mary lived alone, she was never lonely. She had something far richer than gold. She had community. Her neighbors loved her not just for her wisdom, but for her kindness. She listened like no one else could, quietly, fully, with a heart wide open. She comforted the grieving, cheered the lost, and celebrated even the tiniest joys with those around her. In return, the village looked after her. Children brought her painted pebbles and wildflowers. Grown-ups dropped by with baskets of bread, jars of honey, and knitted socks. On market days, someone always brought her something, whether she needed it or not. One crisp autumn morning, with the trees burning orange and gold, Mary awoke to a chilly breeze. The fire in her hearth had died down overnight. She wrapped herself in her thickest shawl, slipped on her boots, and decided to gather firewood from the forest. The forest was her oldest friend. It welcomed her with rustling leaves and shafts of golden light that danced between the branches. As she wandered deeper, her basket swinging by her side, she hummed an old tune. It was peaceful here, serene. The world slowed down, and her thoughts felt lighter. Then something caught her eye. Near the base of a large oak tree, half hidden beneath fallen leaves and roots, was a strange shape. Curious, she walked over and began to brush away the dirt. What she uncovered was a large, ancient pot, heavy and decorated with curious swirls and symbols. Moss clung to its sides, and it gave off a mysterious, timeless energy. With effort, Mary pushed open the heavy lid. Her breath caught in her throat. The pot was filled, brimming with glittering gold coins. Each one shone like the sun, so bright they nearly blinded her. Mary gasped, then laughed in pure astonishment. She had never seen such wealth, not even in her wildest dreams. Her mind raced with possibilities: a grand new house, a cozy fireplace, a rocking chair with soft cushions, a pantry filled with fine teas and jams, maybe even a trip to the ocean where she could walk along the beach and collect shells like she used to when she was a girl. But as quickly as joy bubbled up, so did practicality. The pot was far too heavy to carry. Even with her strongest basket, it would be impossible. Mary was nothing if not resourceful. Looking around, she gathered fallen wooden planks and fashioned a makeshift sled. She tied a sturdy cloth around the pot and used an old rope from her basket to secure it. Then, slowly, determinedly, she began dragging the sled along the forest path toward home. The pot was heavy, very heavy. Mary had to pause often, catching her breath, wiping her brow, but she smiled through it. She whispered to herself, "Not long now. Soon I'll be warm, and my old bones won't ache anymore." But something strange was happening. At one of her rest stops, she lifted the lid of the pot again to admire the gold, and gasped. The coins were no longer gold. They had turned silver, still beautiful, still valuable, but not the same. A little pang pricked her heart. "Oh dear," she murmured, "that's odd." But she took a deep breath, let the disappointment pass through her like a breeze, and whispered, "Silver is still a blessing. I'll still have warmth. Maybe a smaller cottage, but still cozy." And on she went. But the path was long, and the pot seemed to grow heavier. She stopped again after a steep hill, opened the lid, and felt her heart drop. The coins were now dull, gray iron. No gold, no silver, just plain, rough metal. For a moment, she sat in stunned silence. All her dreams of comfort, of ease, seemed to melt away like morning frost. She had hoped for a gentler life, a little luxury in her old age. The disappointment settled over her like a cold fog. Then she looked around. The forest had never been more beautiful. Light streamed through the branches like heaven itself had opened. Birds chirped nearby. A squirrel watched her curiously from a branch, and the leaves rustled softly like they were singing just for her. And Mary smiled, not a forced smile, a true one, the kind that comes from a deeper place. She thought of her cottage with its crooked chimney, her neighbors who brought her stew and laughter, the children who loved her stories. Her life, though simple, was already full of richness, the kind that didn't fade or change like coins in a pot. She gently touched the pot one last time. "Thank you," she whispered. "You reminded me what matters most." And with that, she left the pot by the tree right where she found it and walked home with a lighter heart than she had felt in years. That evening, Mary sat by her small fire with a cup of chamomile tea, her old shawl wrapped around her shoulders. The fire crackled cheerfully, and her heart glowed with quiet joy. She had nothing new, no gold, no riches, but she had peace. And peace, she realized, was the greatest treasure of all. The next day, curious whispers filled Elderwood. Tommy, the baker's son, had seen Mary dragging a sled through the woods. Ellie said she saw something shiny inside the pot. Soon, a small group of children knocked on Mary's door, eyes wide with curiosity. "Miss Mary," Ellie asked, "did you really find treasure in the woods?" Mary chuckled and welcomed them in. Before long, her little cottage was filled with villagers of all ages. Children, mothers, old friends, shopkeepers. They sat around her fireplace, eager to hear the truth. So, Mary told them the story. She described the gold, the silver, the iron, and how each change had made her reflect deeper. She told them how she'd left it behind and why. There was no bitterness in her voice, only warmth. When she finished, the room was silent. Then George, the old clockmaker, nodded slowly. "It's not the gold that's the treasure, is it?" Mary smiled. "No, George, it never was." Years passed. Seasons came and went. Children grew, laughter echoed, and Elderwood remained as lovely as ever. Mary grew older, slower, softer, but her spirit never dimmed. On her 90th birthday, the whole village gathered in the square. They hung lanterns from trees, played music, shared food, and danced. Mary sat in a cushioned chair wrapped in her shawl, surrounded by people whose lives she had touched. As the sun set and stars began to shine, Ellie, now a mother herself, sat beside her. "Are you happy, Mary?" she asked quietly. Mary looked out at the glowing faces, the joy, the warmth, and smiled. "I am richer than I ever dreamed." And with that, she closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the music, the laughter, the life around her. Out in the forest, beneath the old oak tree, the pot remained, still, silent, untouched. But it had done its work, because the real treasure had never been gold. It had been Mary. One day, months later, a writer from the city arrived. He had heard tales of a village where people smiled more than they frowned, where hearts were full, even if wallets weren't. He stayed at the inn, visited Clara's bakery, and eventually made his way to Mary's cottage. She welcomed him as she always did, with tea and stories. He listened, wide-eyed, as she told her tale, not to impress, but just as it happened. Later, he wrote a book titled The Treasure of Elderwood. In the dedication, he wrote, "To Mary, who reminded us that the richest hearts live in the simplest homes." The story of Mary and the pot spread like sunlight across Elderwood. It was retold in schools, written in journals, and shared over meals. Children pretended to find magical pots in the woods, but instead imagined what their treasures were: puppies, parents, gardens, bedtime stories. Mary's wisdom began to ripple through the village. Clara, a young baker who often doubted herself, wrote a new sign in her shop: "Baked with gratitude, not gold." People noticed the change in her. Her bread tasted warmer somehow. Her smile lingered longer. She even started teaching kids how to bake on weekends. Mr. Hemsley, a retired teacher who had felt forgotten, began offering story hours under the village oak. People gathered again, just like old times. Elderwood began to glow with a quiet joy, not because anyone had more, but because they noticed what they already had.